We continue with chapter 15 and more racing. The wildest race for us was probably the old-timers Olympics, thought up by Ernie Blake, who now owned and operated the famous and beautiful Taos ski area. This was in the end of March of 1970, and we had just finished competing in the National Vets races at Vail. Vail had been most satisfying for us, since Max was now racing with me, as also were our son Rolf and his wife Judy. Both Rolf and Judy had reached the ripe old ages of 26 and 27, which qualified them as veterans. The age classification had been dropped to 25 and over, and we were now separated into age groups. Class 1, 25 to 32 years, Class 2, 32 to 40, and so on. I was glad because at age 56, I had no desire to race against the 32-year-olds. Colonel Ed Link, energetic manager of the Crystal Mountain, Washington ski area, had been racing at Vail as well. Being over 50, he decided to join us at Taos. What none of us realized was that Sandia Peak ski area out of Albuquerque was also hosting some of the races. Taos and Albuquerque about 2 hours apart. Arriving at Taos the night before the Taos Giant Slalom, Ernie Blake invited the three of us to an unforgettable dinner in John Mayer's Inn, the St. Bernard. Rare roast beef and beautifully fragrant French wine were served in a truly French-Swiss atmosphere. Why do I bother skiing, I thought. Why don't I just become a racer chaser and follow Max around? Eat like this, blaze in the warm sun, and forget about the starting gate and all the gates thereafter. But I knew the next morning I would only have to look at the start, and I'd feel like an eager old racehorse, ready to go. First day was the giant slalom, and the next day the slalom. At the end of that race, before eating, we had to drive madly down to Albuquerque. There we would be guests for cocktails at a lovely hacienda, and then to Old Town for dinner, and on to bed. The next morning we took the tram up from the base of Sandia Peak. This carried us high above the mountainside, but we could look down on warm, jagged rocks with cactus about to bloom. Here and there we could see the mountain sheep lying down next to a rock or standing on a sharp pinnacle. I doubted we could ski once we got to the top, as there was no snow in sight. This was desert country, and I wondered if someone was playing a joke on us. But after unloading in the big tramway house and stepping outside, we looked to the east and down a snowy slope with well-groomed trails and a double chairlift already carrying early morning skiers up from the east side. From the restaurant where we were given our race numbers, we could look in both directions to views that were too dramatic to describe. We had a giant slalom to run. One of the racers, Ken Bartholomew, and I noticed, had no ski poles. Riding up the chairlift with him, I asked him why. "Oh," he answered me, "you see, I've never raced in skiing before. In 1948, I won a gold medal in the Olympics in speed skating. When I heard of the ski race for over 50-year-olds, I thought I'd give it a try. I live in Minnesota and do some skiing. Thought it'd be fun." I was going up the chairlift after my run when I saw him come down. He's doing exactly what I did in my first race in '38, I thought. Before our second run, I asked Ken if he'd mind if I gave him a bit of advice. Glad for any, he said. So I told him to turn before he got to the gate and not after he'd gone through the gate. I also added to my advice, use ski poles. You'll be able to push out of the start so much faster and then skate like hell, like you're in a speed skating race. But do turn before you get to the gate. At the bottom, skate and pole to the finish gate. He did it all and came in third. Evidently, once a competitor, always a competitor. The next March of '71, there he was up at Sun Valley with the rest of us for the Vets Nationals. Back down to Taos for the next day's race, a slalom, and then return to Albuquerque for the last race, another slalom, and then an awards banquet. It was all crazy, but we loved it. It's been over 44 years of racing. Many races funny, many thrilling, and some frustrating, such as the Eve Perkins Memorial Race at Loveland Pass. On March 10, 1956, the Southern Rocky Mountain Ski Notes published the Class A results. Mary Lynn won 6.8, first place. Beverly Pollock won 9.4, second. Edna Dercum 101.7, third. I was listed as third and should have had first place. I was too timid at the end of the race to protest, even though our good friend Hans Bookstrom, who had seen the results, told me to. Having learned my lesson, I spoke up when it happened again. 2 weeks after the 1956 May Day race at Arapahoe, which I knew I had won, I received a letter and a gold pin from the race officials. The letter said, "The humiliating aspect of the affair was that you did not receive the pin that you earned at the presentation of awards. Thanks for calling our attention to the questionable validity of the results." My biggest frustration, however, was at the Loveland Grand Prix in 1964. The race was a long and difficult giant slalom. Tensely and determined, I tucked and shushed the last steep face. I knew I had raced well. Running up to me after I crossed the finish line, one of the timers yelled, "We didn't get your time. You'll have to go back up and run again." I was exhausted, but down to the lift line I skied and then up to the lift to the start where the men's races had already begun. At the end of my rerun, the timer came up to me. "We didn't believe your first time because it was so good, so asked you to run again. You've won the race. We'll give you your first time, as both times were very close." It made me furious to have been treated that way. Being older than most of the others was not always an advantage. No one believed this 50-year-old lady's time. Since 1953, it's been Squaw Valley, Park City, Aspen, Sun Valley, Bogus Basin, Big Sky, Stevens Pass, Crystal Mountain, Copper Mountain, and our first international race in 1980 in Italy and in Switzerland. The last two were for ages 40 and older. At the race in Italy, my first international race, while standing in the starting gate with the usual nervous anticipation, I found I couldn't understand the starter. How will I know when he counts down me out of the gate. I was frantic, but upon hearing the word uno, I shot out of the gate. There wasn't much difference in the 180 veteran racers from over half a dozen countries in Europe than in those from the US. They had the same friendly, congenial attitude. However, we noticed their lifestyle of apparent wealth, and they had the finest equipment. Winning the Veterans World Cups and gold medals in our age class were proud moments for Max and for me. I never dreamed we would be World Cup winners. This was the first year Americans had participated in their European races. Actually, I won the combined medal for the highest score in my class for the 8 races. In the slalom in Switzerland, I was 6th over all women, 40 and over. Max, who had stiffer competition, won the combined for 4 races. What satisfaction at ages 65 and 67. In Italy at the Over 40 World Cup, February of 1980, after checking the list of women racers, I discovered, just like at races at home, I was the oldest woman racer there. Suddenly it dawned on me, I'm the only oldest woman ski racer in the world.